China has continued its controversial grip over Hong Kong. The Communist Party has passed these new national security laws, which we knew were coming, which critics fear will crush political freedoms. Effectively, Jim, and I think this is fair to say, they've performed a legal and security takeover of Hong Kong 27 years before they agreed to.
Yes, I was surprised that they've taken such a legalistic view of it. I was expecting at some stage that the People's Armed Police would move across the border during the height of the last series of protesters, but they have finally approved the bill that they've been talking about at some stage. That's already driven a number of the leaders of the rebel groups within Hong Kong to leave those groups. But it should remind us of one thing, Chris, and that is we are dealing with a country which has a particular view as to the use of power, as to the exercise of its power. It's not mucking around. No,
it's not. And there they were, just to sort of lash back at the accusations that were said last week after the Labor MP was raided at his home and his office, the New South Wales Labor MP, and now they're accusing the Morrison government of intensifying their spying activities on China. There's the pot calling the kettle black, Tina.
Yeah, look, it's disgraceful. And keep in mind this new law, no one in Hong Kong has actually seen it yet. It's going to be quite severe, and a number of countries have responded already, including Japan, who said it was regrettable, Great Britain. The Senate, the US Senate has passed the Hong Kong Autonomy Bill, which they will impose sanctions if it's as severe as they think. But it's dreadful, Hong Kong. I've got a lot of friends in Hong Kong that are really quite scared of what's going to happen and fear it won't be the same Hong Kong.
Sanctions will be the next step. You can bet on it. New data has brought to light how many agricultural assets are foreign-owned across Queensland. A review has found 20% of the state's water entitlements are now foreign-owned. Evan, can you believe that, 20%?
Yeah, look, it's really not surprising. What we're saying, in terms of foreign ownership, I think we can use the term national interest a bit over the top. When we've got investment in property, all rules that apply to each and every Australian also apply equally to the investors of those properties. And things like Bob Katter are proposing having unelected bureaucrats govern who can and cannot buy land in Australia, I think are meddled with issues.
OK, but Evan, when do we sort of wake up and say we need to put a cap on this? Do we wait till it gets to 70 or 75%?
I do think it's important to see who is and isn't and be transparent about who is and isn't buying land in Australia. But it's not like foreign investors can pick up the land and take it elsewhere. The issue I have with unelected bureaucrats deciding and who can and cannot do that is the last time we decided we'd have bureaucrats meddling with foreign interference, we had people like Tony Abbott and Andrew Cooper and CPAC investigated for foreign interference. So I do think we can't exactly say to a farmer who has perhaps been struggling with drought that he's going to have to sell his property or his or her property for much less because we've made new rules around it. I think that'll be unfair to those Australians. OK, I
want to get to this one. We could talk about that all night, that one. Can I just raise this? And the woke cancel culture caravan has found its way to the Blue Mountains, west of Sydney, and they're coming after a Henry Lawson statue this time. That's right. But the petition is wrong. They're going for Henry Lawson, the legendary bush poet, but who they really want to go for is William Lawson, the explorer. That's who they're after. But to the history revisionists, maybe they'll just go for both, Jim Molan. What rot?
Absolute rot. And it's international rot. It's international idiocy. And someone's got to write a book at some stage about the idiocy of the Black Lives Matter and the defund and the pulling down statues movement. Because in Massachusetts, Chris, the Black Lives Matter movement trashed a monument to the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, and that happened to be a regiment of freed slaves who fought in the American Civil War to free more slaves. So, we don't have a monopoly on idiocy amongst these people, and it's great to see the Mayor up there taking a strong stand against it.
Yes, I noticed the comments from the Mayor, but we're talking, Tina, about Wentworth, Blaxland and William Lawson, not Henry Lawson, who cut their paths to the west and created enormous commerce and services for the rest of New South Wales.
We owe them so much, but I tell you who's confused. Gulgong's very confused because they own Henry Lawson, Chris, and they're up in arms over it. Look, the lunacy has to stop, but we need leaders to stop this. Jim, you're in Parliament. We can't just sit back and say, it's rot, it's terrible.
Agreed.
We have to get our leaders to act on this.
Yeah.
Our Prime Minister has to act on this, just like Trump has to come down hard on all those idiots in America. We need action, we need now, or we will have no say and be overrun.
Correct, we need to stand up. Evan Mulholland, just a quick one on that in general. We get to the stage where people want to rewrite history using the moral norms of 2020, but using it against those who were living in the 1800s and the 1700s. Impossible to do, and we don't want our history rewritten.
I think this proves the councillors don't even know what they're trying to cancel. But it goes to the point that the IPA has been banging on about for years and years, is that this rot starts in our universities. This is why we've been going on about the crisis of humanities at our universities, the free speech crisis, trigger warnings, cancel culture, safe spaces.
True.
Because the graduates we're pumping through end up in our PR departments, end up in our businesses, and end up in our media where, woke fragility is the new trend of the day, and people need to be protected from historical facts of the past. We can't judge the past and figures on the politically correct content of today.
It's a modern version of anarchy, and we should be contesting it. We've got to contest it harder.